When presence becomes a weapon. In the silent moments before dawn, the mind is tested in ways most people never realize. Some crumble when the pressure hits like reeds in the wind, while others remain steadfast, unshakable like a mountain carved by centuries of storms. Imagine having access to the ancient secret that transforms mental fragility into a presence so solid it naturally intimidates. Not through aggression, but through a serenity that exposes the instability of others simply by contrast. A force so profound that its mere existence disturbs those who live hostage to impulses, uncontrolled emotions, and invisible fears. This isn't another video about positive thinking or superficial self-control techniques. I'm not going to teach you how to think differently while your mental structure remains fragile inside. This isn't about motivational affirmations that evaporate at the first real sign of adversity. What you're about to discover comes from a millennia-old lineage of warriors, monks, and strategists who understood something revolutionary. The human mind isn't born strong. It's intentionally forged through specific practices that our modern culture has either deliberately forgotten or never truly understood. There's a secret shame you carry, the painful feeling of being mentally weak, of succumbing to distractions, of being dominated by emotions that sabotage your decisions, of feeling like your mind is a territory occupied by forces you can't control. But this fragility isn't a character flaw. It's a direct result of never having learned how to build resilient mental architecture. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary swordsman who never lost a duel in 60 mortal combats, intimidated opponents before the fight even began. His presence radiated such unshakable calm that adversaries crumbled psychologically upon realizing they were facing someone whose mind didn't waver under extreme pressure. In this video, for the first time, you'll receive the complete system, not inspirational fragments, but the precise engineering of how Eastern masters built minds that chaos cannot break. This knowledge was codified in texts such as the Book of Five Rings, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Bodhidharma's teachings, and Xuanzi's philosophy, traditions separated by centuries and continents, but which converge on identical principles of mental fortitude. Today, these teachings will be translated to your modern reality, your chronic procrastination, your paralyzing anxiety, your inability to maintain discipline when no one is looking. Brace yourself, because what comes next isn't abstract theory. It's mental technology tested on real battlefields and silent monasteries for over 1,000 years. Welcome to Axiom Sage, where the timeless wisdom of the East meets the invisible battles of the modern mind. This is How to Build a Mind So Strong It Terrifies People. Lessons from Miyamoto Musashi. Why feeling desire keeps you weak. Have you ever noticed that you're always waiting to feel like it before doing anything important? You wait to feel motivated to start. You wait to feel inspired to keep going. You wait to feel courageous enough to face the difficult. And when those emotions don't appear, which happens most days, you simply don't act. You're paralyzed, consumed by guilt, watching your life slip away while you wait for an emotional state that never reliably arrives. But here's the brutal truth no one told you. This reliance on emotional motivation isn't just ineffective, it's the very mechanism that keeps you mentally weak. Our culture has built a dangerous collective neurosis, the belief that we need to feel like it before we act. Movies, social media, motivational coaches, they all sell the fantasy that successful people wake up inspired, energized, ready to conquer the day. So you try to replicate that. You consume motivational content, repeat positive affirmations, create exciting visions of the future, and it works for 3 days. Then the temporary dopamine rush evaporates. You return to your usual state of mind and interpret this dip as personal failure, when in fact it's just predictable biology. Neuroscience reveals what Musashi already knew intuitively. Motivation is a temporary neurochemical discharge, a spike in dopamine that quickly dissipates. Discipline, on the other hand, is the permanent reconfiguration of neural circuits through consistent repetition. Richard Davidson, a neuroscientist who has studied Zen meditators for decades, discovered something extraordinary. Tibetan monks exhibit radically reduced activity in the amygdala, the brain region responsible for emotional reactions, even under extreme stress. They don't feel like remaining calm. Their neural structure has been literally reshaped through years of practice, so that calm is the default state, not the exception achieved through heroic effort. Samurai warriors understood this viscerally. Yamamoto, Tsunetomo, and the Hagakure wrote, "The path of the warrior is death. On days when you feel fear, you must act especially courageously." Do you see the radical difference? He didn't say, wait until you feel courageous. He said, act especially when you don't. Because samurai who depended on feeling courageous to fight died on the days they woke up afraid. And fear is a constant state on the battlefield. Those who survived were those whose actions were decoupled from their emotional state. They trained so much that performing under pressure became automatic, regardless of how they felt at the time. You're not weak for not feeling like it. You're conditioned to wait for emotional permission to fully exist. And as long as you remain hostage to this pattern, your mind will remain in a territory occupied by fleeting moods, fleeting impulses, and invisible fears. The first key to building an iron mind is brutal but liberating. Action precedes emotion, not the other way around. And when you finally integrate this, not intellectually, but into the operational structure of your life, everything changes. Masters who mastered mental architecture. There is a secret lineage of masters who have spanned millennia, leaving fragmented trails of revolutionary knowledge about mental fortitude. These were not theoretical philosophers writing from ivory towers. They were real warriors facing imminent death, monks testing the limits of human consciousness under extreme conditions, strategists whose survival depended on absolute mental clarity under unbearable pressure. And all of them, regardless of era or tradition, arrived at the same fundamental conclusions about how to forge a mind that chaos cannot break. Miyamoto Musashi was born in 1584 in feudal Japan. Orphaned at 7, he became a ronin at 13, a samurai without a master, without a clan, without a place in the world. At 16, he killed his first man in a duel. At 29, he defeated Sasaki Kojuro, Japan's most feared swordsman, in a battle that became legendary. But what truly separated Musashi from other warriors wasn't superior technical skill. It was his mental presence. Witnesses to his duels described something disturbing. While his opponents displayed visible tension, rigid muscles, rapid breathing, fixed eyes, Musashi remained relaxed, almost indifferent, as if he were observing flowers in a Zen garden rather than facing imminent death. This calm wasn't a performance. It was the result of decades of sculpting his mind through daily practices that transformed serenity into his essential nature, not a hard-won state. Centuries earlier, in China, Bodhidharma, the Indian monk who founded Zen Buddhism, taught the Shaolin monks something revolutionary. True mental strength is not the absence of disturbance, but the ability to remain centered when everything falls apart. He observed that monks would meditate for hours, but mentally collapse at the first real adversity. So he introduced brutal martial training integrated with meditation, not as violence, but as a laboratory to test mental presence under extreme physical stress. His philosophy was straightforward. A mind that cannot endure bodily discomfort will never develop authentic resilience. Spiritual practice without testing under pressure is a comfortable fantasy, not real transformation. In ancient India, Patanjali codified the precise science of mental discipline in the Yoga Sutras. He identified two fundamental pillars: abhyasa, constant practice, and virajaya, non-attachment to results. It's not about doing something until it works. It's about doing something consistently regardless of whether it works. Because the very act of practicing without the need for external validation rebuilds neural structure so that eventual results become inevitable, not achieved through heroic effort. Yoga masters don't try to be calm. Calm is their default operating state because they've practiced so much that their nervous system has literally been reshaped. And in Confucian China, Xuanzi, a philosopher often ignored because his ideas are uncomfortable, taught a brutal truth. Human nature tends toward the easy, the pleasurable, the path of least resistance. We are not naturally disciplined. We are naturally lazy, impulsive, driven by immediate gratification. Greatness does not emerge spontaneously. It It requires intentional cultivation against our innate tendencies. This is not pessimism. It is liberating realism. Because when you stop expecting discipline to be natural or easy, you stop beating yourself up for not having it come naturally, and you finally begin the real work of deliberately building it. These masters never met. They lived centuries and thousands of miles apart, but they converge on an identical truth. A strong mind is not a genetic gift or a personality trait. It is intentional construction through specific practices repeated until new neural structure replaces old patterns. And they left the complete map, not as poetic inspiration, but as replicable engineering. If you're starting to realize there's real technology here, not just fancy philosophy, write in the comments, "I build my mind," and subscribe to this channel by activating the bell, because we'll unpack each component of this mental architecture throughout this journey, not to inspire you, but to equip you with tools that work when applied consistently. When mental fragility meets samurai discipline. Let me tell you about Lucas, 32 years old, a software developer in Sao Paulo, single, living alone. From the outside, a functional life. From the inside, a silent war. He woke up every day with his mind already racing, anxiety about deadlines, rumination over past conversations, worry about an uncertain future. He tried to meditate using popular apps, but his mind wouldn't stop. He tried to create routines, but any unexpected event would blow up the entire structure. He tried to be mentally strong, but the more he forced control, the more his mind seemed to slip away like water through closed fingers. Lucas had tried everything modern culture offers for a strong mindset. Therapy that helped him understand patterns, but didn't change automatic reactivity. Self-help books that temporarily inspired, but didn't create sustainable change. Online productivity courses that worked for a week until mental exhaustion brought down the entire system. And after each failed attempt, the internal narrative grew more cruel. Everyone can have discipline. Why are you so weak? You'll always be this way. It was in a moment of quiet desperation, 3 a.m, unable to sleep with his mind in an anxious loop, that Lucas stumbled upon an article about Miyamoto Musashi. And one specific sentence pierced his armor of cynicism. Discipline isn't about never failing. It's about building a system so robust that individual failures become irrelevant. For the first time in years, Lucas didn't hear promises of rapid transformation. He heard validation that the process is slow, failures are a natural part of life, and mental strength isn't the absence of struggle. It's the ability to keep building even when it seems futile. Lucas began researching obsessively. He discovered that everything he had tried before failed because it attacked symptoms while ignoring the architecture. He didn't need more motivation. He needed to rebuild the operational structure of how his mind processed stress, discomfort, and daily decisions. He started with something ridiculously small, 5 minutes a day of sitting in silence, simply observing his breath, not trying to empty his mind or achieve a special state, just observing. The first few days were torture. His mind racing, his body restless, his constant urge to stop. But he established a non-negotiable rule. 5 minutes, every day, no matter how he felt. After 2 weeks, something subtle changed. There was no dramatic lighting, just a growing awareness of the minimal space between stimulus and reaction. When anxiety arose during work, there was a split second where he could choose his response instead of being automatically hijacked. He added the second practice. 3 conscious breaths before opening his laptop, before picking up his cell phone, before reacting to a stressful message. Again, nothing spectacular, just repeated anchoring in the present instead of living in a mental loop about the past and future. 6 months later, Lucas is no longer an enlightened guru. He still has difficult days. His mind still races under pressure. But something fundamental has changed. He no longer fears his own mind. He no longer wakes up panicking about whether he'll be able to function that day, because he's built a system of practices so deeply rooted that even on bad days, the basic structure remains. He's discovered the secret Musashi already knew. You don't need a perfect mind. You need a trained mind. And a trained mind remains functional even when disturbed, because disturbance isn't a problem to be eliminated. It's a condition to be navigated with cultivated skill. And the promise I make now is the same one Lucas discovered. There is a proven path to building real mental fortitude. It's not quick. It's not easy. It's not magical. But it's replicable, applicable, and works for anyone willing to do the invisible work that no one applauds but changes everything. In the next few minutes, you will receive the complete transmission, the ancient practices that transformed Lucas and that can rebuild your mental architecture from scratch. The hidden pillars of the unshaken mind, the relentless mirror of self-observation. Musashi wrote, "Observe yourself rigorously." It's not about positive self-help or motivational affirmations. It's about developing the brutal ability to see your mental patterns without filters, without justifications, without comfortable narratives. Lucas had to admit painful truths, that he avoided difficult tasks by distracting himself, that he used social media to numb anxiety, that his lack of time was actually a lack of honest prioritization. The practice, 5 minutes a day of non-judgmental mental observation. Sit down, close your eyes, and simply notice thoughts that arise as if you were a spectator watching a movie. Thoughts about work, thoughts about relationships, thoughts about money. You don't try to change anything. You just develop a clear vision of how your mind operates automatically. And with consistent observation, something magical happens. Unconscious patterns begin to become conscious, and what is conscious can finally be modified. The anchor of deliberate presence. Bodhidharma taught that a scattered mind is a weak mind. Our culture has trained us to be simultaneously in 15 mental places while the body is in one physical place. You are thinking about what needs to be done next. You eat thinking about what happened before. You talk to someone while your mind wanders to absent concerns. This constant fragmentation isn't efficient multitasking. It's a chronic dissipation of mental energy that leaves you exhausted without producing anything substantial. The revolutionary practice: 3 conscious breaths at key points in the day. Before opening your laptop, before entering a meeting, before picking up your cell phone. Just 3 breaths where your attention is completely focused on feeling the air entering, the chest expanding, the presence returning. Neuroscience calls this strengthening the prefrontal cortex. Buddhists call it mindfulness. The name doesn't matter. The effect is always the same. You train the muscle of attention to return to the present instead of getting lost in mental storms about yesterday and tomorrow. And trained attention is the foundation of all authentic mental strength. The alchemy of intentional discomfort. Xuanzi revealed the truth no one wants to hear. Constant comfort doesn't strengthen, it atrophies. Every time you avoid discomfort, you reinforce weak neural circuits. Every time you choose easy over important, you teach your brain that discomfort is an enemy to be avoided, not territory to be conquered. Lucas discovered that his procrastination wasn't laziness. It was a trained aversion to any uncomfortable sensation. So he began practicing strategic discomfort, 2-minute cold showers, intermittent fasting for 16 hours, sitting in meditation even when his body screamed to move. Not as masochistic self-punishment, but as deliberate training. Discomfort is not an emergency. I can feel it without reacting automatically. And as your tolerance for discomfort increases, everything else in life becomes easier. Difficult conversation, you've practiced much worse discomfort. Boring task, you've practiced doing what you don't want to do. Samurai meditated in the cold and fasted not out of mystical tradition. They were laboratories for forging resilience through controlled and repeated stress. The sacred rituals of sculpted identity. Dogen taught, practice doesn't lead to enlightenment. Practice is enlightenment. It's not about doing something until it works. It's about doing something consistently until the very doing becomes who you are. Lucas didn't become disciplined by deciding to be disciplined. He became disciplined by repeating non-negotiable micro-rituals until they no longer required conscious effort. 5 minutes of silence upon waking, 3 acts of gratitude before bed, 30 minutes of walking without a cell phone. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to remodel itself, requires approximately 10,000 repetitions to transform conscious action into automatic action. It seems daunting until you calculate it. 10 minutes of daily practice reaches 10,000 repetitions in less than 3 years. 3 years will pass either way. You can get there with a strong mind or with a mind even more fragile than today. Daily rituals aren't tasks. They're slow sculptings of who you become. And consistency, not intensity, is what permanently rebuilds neural architecture. The strategic flow of non-resistance. Musashi observed water. It doesn't try to be strong. It simply flows around obstacles, eventually shaping even stone. He applied this to combat. Adapt to your opponent as water adapts to its container. Lucas spent years resisting reality, fighting circumstances he couldn't control, demanding that life follow his plans. The practice of Wu Wei, action without forced resistance. When faced with an obstacle, instead of brutally forcing it, ask, what is the path of least resistance that still leads me to my goal? Sometimes it's waiting. Sometimes it's working around it. Sometimes it's using the obstacle's strength against itself. You stop wasting energy trying to change what you can't change and redirect all that strength toward what you can change. Your response, your strategy, your perspective. A strong mind isn't rigid. It's flexible, maintaining its center, like bamboo that bends in a storm, but doesn't break because its roots remain firm. The union of wisdom and relentless execution. Patanjali taught Abhyasa, practice, and Vairagya, non-attachment to results, as twin pillars. Our culture has sold the lie that we should act only with guaranteed results. Lucas was paralyzed waiting for total clarity, the perfect moment, or ideal motivation. They never arrived. The revolutionary practice. Act from what you know now, not from what you wish you knew. Wisdom without action is sterile philosophy. Action without wisdom is wasted effort. But when you combine the two, study deeply, reflect honestly, and then act courageously even without guarantees, every action becomes a learning experiment. Success teaches you what works. Failure teaches you what to adjust. Both are victories when you're on the path to continuous mastery, not seeking one-off validation. The radical acceptance of impermanence. Yamamoto Tsunetomo revealed the most disturbing samurai secret. The warrior's path is found in death, not as nihilism, but as profound liberation. When you accept that you can lose everything at any moment, health, wealth, relationships, life, the fear of losing small things disappears. Lucas began a disturbing daily practice. 3 minutes of contemplating mortality. If I died today, would I have lived according to what truly matters? Not to depress, but to clarify. Because when you face finitude head-on, masks fall, excuses evaporate, and what remains is brutal clarity about what you truly want to do with the time you have. And this clarity, paradoxically, fills you with a vibrant urgency to live fully each day you still breathe. A mind that accepts impermanence doesn't fear change, it dances with it. If you feel that each of these teachings touches on something profound that's been forgotten, let us know in the comments which one resonated most viscerally with you. And if you want to continue this journey of true mental reconstruction, subscribe now by activating the bell. Because each video here is designed to be a component of a complete architecture, not a one-off inspiration that evaporates tomorrow. Direct experience from the real estate center. Now let's do something different. I don't want you to just understand intellectually. I want you to directly experience, here and now, a fraction of what these practices can create. If you're in a place where you can do this safely, I'll guide you through 90 seconds that will give you a tangible experience of unshakable mindfulness. Stop everything. Sit with your spine straight, but not rigid, or stand with your feet firmly planted. Close your eyes, or gently lower your gaze. Take a deep breath through your nose, mentally counting to 4. Hold for 4 seconds. Exhale through your mouth, counting to 6, emptying your mouth completely. Do this 3 times, slowly, feeling each inhale fill your body with fresh oxygen. Each exhale release accumulated tension you didn't even realize you were holding. After the 3rd breath, bring your attention to the center of your chest, just behind your sternum. Imagine a point of solidity there, not a floating light, but a heavy, dense, immovable anchor. With each breath, feel this center becoming more real, more present. Don't force the visualization, just gently suggest it and observe what emerges naturally. Notice any physical sensations, warmth, heaviness, expansion, firmness. There is no right or wrong sensation, Just observe what is without judgment. Now, mentally acknowledge, there is a center within me that no storm can move. Not as an empty statement, but as an acknowledgement of something that has always been there, just forgotten beneath layers of distraction and reactivity. Feel the weight of your body in the chair or on the floor. Feel the temperature of the air on your skin. Feel the sounds of the environment around you without losing yourself in them. You are here, present, rooted, and in this very moment, exactly as you are, you possess strength that is independent of external circumstances. When you're ready, take another deep breath and slowly open your eyes. Notice if anything has changed, even subtly, in the quality of your presence, the clarity of your mind, the sensation in your body. Perhaps you'll gain a centeredness that wasn't there 2 minutes ago. Perhaps you'll experience a sharper perception of your surroundings. Perhaps you'll simply experience a momentary stillness of mind that normally never stops. This isn't auto-suggestion or a placebo. It's direct access to the state that samurai cultivated before every battle. A still center that remains stable even when everything around is chaos. And here's the secret that took Lucas months to discover. This feeling, this state, this center, you can access it at any time. In the middle of stressful traffic, in a heated argument, in a moment of paralyzing anxiety. Not because you've become special, but because you've trained the muscle of presence. And the more you practice, not occasionally when you remember, but consistently as a non-negotiable ritual, the more automatic it becomes. Until one day you realize, the storm still exists, but you're no longer swept away by it. You've become the mountain that watches clouds pass without being moved by them. When all practices become one nature, now you have the complete components. But understand this with absolute clarity. They're not separate practices that you perform mechanically like a to-do list. They are facets of a single truth, different angles of sculpting the same inner strength. When you truly integrate this knowledge, they cease to be techniques you perform and become the nature of who you are. Musashi spent his entire life refining his art. At 20, he won through superior technique and youthful aggression. At 40, he won through refined strategy and a deep understanding of his opponent. By 60, when he wrote the Book of Five Rings, he had transcended technique completely. He no longer fought. He simply responded to the moment with totality. Each movement arose spontaneously from the still center cultivated for decades. This is not a mystical talent reserved for the chosen. It is the natural result of conscious and consistent practice applied until a new neural pattern completely replaces the old. Consider Lucas's journey. At first, he practiced each teaching consciously, almost robotically. He reminded himself, now it's time for morning meditation. Now I will take 3 breaths before reacting. Now I will observe this anxiety without being hijacked by it. But after months of intentional repetition, something fundamental shifted. The teachings began to merge organically. He no longer needed to remember. They simply happened. Presence became his default operating state, not a hard-won exception. Discomfort became familiar territory, not a threat to be avoided. Strategic flexibility became intuition, not conscious decision. This is what ancient masters called Wu Wei, action without forced effort. Not because there's no effort at first, but because after you rebuild neural architecture through massive repetition, acting wisely becomes more natural than acting reactively. It's like learning any complex skill. At first, it's conscious, awkward, and requires total concentration. Then it becomes so deeply integrated that it becomes automatic, fluid, and requires no thought. You don't lose the skill. It becomes part of who you are at the most fundamental operational level. And here's the truth that will unite it all. These teachings are not about achieving some perfect future state where you never again feel fear, doubt, or weakness. They are about recognizing that authentic mental strength is not the absence of disturbance. It is the ability to function fully even when disturbed. The inner storm may rage. The center remains still. Musashi felt fear before mortal duels, but he had trained so much that fear no longer controlled his actions. He could feel fear and still execute with surgical precision because the action was decoupled from his emotional state. The work isn't about becoming someone new and perfect. It's about peeling away layers of conditioned reactivity until you reveal the essential nature that was always there. Clear presence, focused attention, appropriate response rather than automatic reaction. Like a sculptor who doesn't create form. He simply removes excess marble to reveal the statue that already existed within. Each practice you do is a hammering away at conditioning, limiting patterns, and obsolete neural circuitry. And what remains isn't an improved you. It's the real you, stripped of layers of mental noise built up by years of cultural conditioning and unprocessed trauma. This is what Musashi discovered. This is what Lucas is discovering. And now you know it too. The journey of mental strength isn't linear, it's spiraling. You revisit the same lessons at ever deeper levels. And each time you practice one more day, you're not just improving performance. You're literally reshaping the physical structure of your brain. Neuroplasticity isn't a metaphor. It's a measurable reality. Your neural circuits are changing right now, in this moment, based on what you're doing repeatedly. The only question is, will you let it happen automatically based on old patterns, or will you intentionally sculpt it through deliberate practice? The terror of unshaken serenity. So we've reached the end of this journey, but also the true beginning. Because everything revealed here, every practice, every teaching, every ancient insight, points to a final truth that will completely upend your understanding of what it means to be strong-minded. The force that terrifies people isn't aggression. It's not domination. It's not authoritarian control. It's unshakable serenity in the face of chaos. When you develop an inner center so solid that you remain calm while everything around you crumbles, it creates a disturbing effect on the people around you. Because your imperturbability exposes their mental fragility. Your centered presence acts as a mirror that reveals how reactive, impulsive, and emotionally unstable they truly are. And that's not comfortable for anyone. Musashi intimidated opponents before fights began not through displays of strength or verbal threats. He intimidated by the complete absence of visible distress. While his opponents displayed obvious signs of stress, muscular tension, irregular breathing, nervous movements, Musashi remained relaxed, present, almost indifferent. And this broke his opponents psychologically because it revealed a brutal disparity. They were fighting their own emotions, while Musashi was simply executing technique refined by decades of practice. The battle was already lost before it began because one was at war internally and the other was at operational peace. Lao Tzu taught, "The wise man acts effortlessly because his mind is like a mirror. It reflects without distortion." Do you understand the depth of this? The mirror is not disturbed by what it reflects. It does not judge, does not react, is not disturbed. It simply shows what is with absolute clarity. And when you develop this mental quality, the ability to see clearly without emotional distortion, to respond appropriately without automatic reaction, you become a force of nature that people don't know how to process. Because they are accustomed to manipulating others through emotion, and you simply cannot be manipulated that way. Here's the final paradox that seals it all. The power you sought outside was always within you, just obscured by layers of conditioning, reactivity, and mental patterns you never questioned because they felt like you. But they're not you. They're programming. And programming can be rewritten through deliberate and consistent practice. Lucas didn't find mental strength in a magic book or secret technique. He found it by removing obstacles that prevented the natural expression of presence that always existed beneath the noise. The naked truth is this: a strong mind is not one that never doubts. It's one that keeps functioning even when doubting. It's not one that never feels fear. It's one that acts appropriately even when afraid. It's not one that never falls. It's one that has built such a robust system of daily practices that individual falls become irrelevant, because the fundamental structure remains intact. As samurai knew, honor isn't in never falling. It's in getting up more often than you do, until the very act of getting up becomes your essential nature. Yamamoto Tsunetomo said something that should be engraved in the consciousness of anyone seeking true fortitude. When meditation and adversity meet, true temperance is born. You don't build an iron mind by avoiding battles. You build them by facing small daily battles. Intentional discomfort, practicing when you don't feel like it, being present when your mind wants to run away, until your presence alone, without having to do anything, is the victory. Because you have become a mountain, and mountains don't need to prove their strength. They simply exist, unshakable, while storms pass. And now, at this very moment, you have a choice. You can treat this video as just another piece of content consumed, mentally filed away and forgotten until tomorrow. Or you can recognize that something has shifted, even subtly, in your understanding of what's possible when you stop looking for tricks and start building architecture. You can choose to start today, not when the conditions are perfect, but now with what you have, where you are as you are. If this video touched something true that was dormant, if you felt a real shift happening as these words sank in, write in the comments, "I forge my mind," not as a statement to impress others, but as a commitment to yourself. And also leave a comment about which practice from this video you'll implement first. When you articulate your intention publicly, you dramatically increase the likelihood of execution. You're not alone on this journey of mental reconstruction. Subscribe to this channel and activate the bell if you want to continue exploring ancient wisdom applied to modern life. No superficial motivation, no magical promises, just proven mental technology translated into your real battles. Because this isn't a fleeting entertainment channel. It's a transformation laboratory for modern warriors who refuse to live with a fragile mind when they know that true strength is possible through consistent practice. Every week, we meet here to continue this construction, not as a one-time event, but as a long-term commitment to who you are becoming. A sharp sword fears no use, so a forged mind fears no challenge. You are being forged now, in this moment, through every decision to practice when you don't feel like it, to stay present when your mind wants to run away, to choose hard over easy because you know that hard is forging. And when the process is complete, not in days or weeks, but in months and years of accumulated practice, you will not be who you were. You will be something much truer, much stronger, much more alive. As Musashi taught, you don't build an iron mind by avoiding battles. You build it by facing small daily battles until your presence alone is the victory. Keep building. The rest will be resolved along the way. Axiom Sage, where timeless wisdom meets modern warfare. Until the next forge.